Royce Morales is the founder and teacher of the Perfect Life Awakening program, author, columnist, and expert on mirroring. She empowers clients with her profound process that helps neutralize self-sabotage, shift stuck patterns and negative thinking by locating the origins of limiting, subconscious programmed beliefs. Live an authentic existence. Discover your true purpose. Connect with your higher consciousness. Reset your life. Transform from triggered to empowered and attract what you truly desire and deserve by discovering what life is reflecting to you. Because it's all mirrors.
Welcome to It's All Mirrors. I am so excited today because my co-host, Daggs III, is going to join me and talk about mirroring in business. And before we get into that, before I even introduce him and tell you all about him, I want to just mention is not the right word, insist or encourage you to really understand why I talk about mirrors so much. I've been doing this for over 4 decades, which is hard to believe, I know, but eventually, after teaching and learning and understanding myself and others a lot better, I discovered that everything is a mirror. That's why I call this show It's All Mirrors. I find that if you stop and look and discover what's really going on underneath the surface, you're going to discover something being reflected to you about your denial. And I'm going to explain more about that in a minute. But I just wanted to emphasize how important it is to understand that, because personally, I know in my life that if I didn't understand mirrors, I would have been divorced on the first day of my marriage. I would have probably, jumped off a cliff a few times. I just can't even imagine life without understanding this concept. And if you look at the bigger picture of things, there would be peace on earth if everybody understood this. And I'm not exaggerating. It really would happen if everybody that was about to go to war stopped and said, I wonder what's being mirrored here, and did some inner work about that. They'd go, wow, okay, well, gosh, thank you for mirroring that denial that I'm in about my own violence or my own need for possessions or territory or whatever it is. They would get it and they would make other choices. And what an amazing world that would be, right? So let me jump into my slides, because I'm going to have Roy talk about his amazing experiences in business using this tool. So I just want to remind everybody, in case you haven't watched my show before, but I want to just explain a little bit about what is mirroring. So there's this unalterable, that means like you can't change it, universal law of energy that states nothing can ever be suppressed. Whatever you push down is going to come up in some way, somewhere, or by someone in your life. And Roy has a lot of experiences he's going to share about how that works in business. So mirroring is what others in life reflect to you that you're suppressing about yourself or in denial of about yourself. And they are, like I said earlier, the most accurate tools to help you awaken to who you really are if you use them. And I have to say, in all my 4 decades of teaching, nobody likes this concept, because it's really hard to look at yourself in the mirror and go, ooh, that's me. So it's hard. Yes. So let's talk about the next slide. The next slide is coming. There we go. I always like to use the analogy that mirrors are like seesaws. If you push down one side of a seesaw, the other side comes up. So if I'm pushing down or ignoring or denying or running from something about myself, it's going to come up in some way on that other side of the seesaw, because energy can never be suppressed. And then the next slide. So mirrors, mirror rule of thumb. This is the best way to tell that something is a mirror. It's infallible. A button is pushed, you're triggered. There's always a mirror of something to see about yourself, always. So what is a button? What are triggers? Negative emotions, judgmental thoughts, judgmental words, needing to be right, feeling guilt, feeling defensive, feeling apathetic, blaming, desiring for revenge, hopelessness, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, etc. All of those things are buttons or triggers. And I find, this is hard to admit too, the louder you protest, oh, this couldn't possibly be my mirror. Like my mother was my biggest mirror, and I spent the earlier 20 years of my life going, oh, I'm not like that. And I tried to prove to the world that I wasn't like that because I was in denial of what was being shown. Finally, I admitted it and things shifted. And that's the interesting part of mirroring. Once you see a mirror, it's like you get your Windex out and you clean it off, and it's like, oh, things can shift now. Let's talk about that next slide. Slowly. Okay. 4 basic ways that mirrors show up. Others act a certain way around you. So I'm denying my anger, and everybody's angry around me or toward me. Others state what I'm in denial of. I deny a fear that I have, so others verbalize it for me. Others withholding from you, and this is a really important one in terms of business. I could tell you some stories. I used to own a retail store for 21 years, and I found that my customers were the best mirrors because if I was pushing something down, if I was saying to myself, I don't deserve to have tremendous sales today, guess what? Everybody showed me that mirror. Nobody wanted to buy anything from me. Others can be a magnification. So I have this little teeny tiny drop of violence in me that I've pushed down. Others want to show me this. My higher self wants to grow and evolve and get in touch with what I'm in denial about. So there's violence, huge mirrors, magnification mirrors. So I really pay attention. Now I find, again, that ignoring and denying mirrors makes them get more extreme until you recognize what they're reflecting. So might as well just get it. So let's get to the next slide. I'm hearing noises. I don't know what that is. Most importantly, you attract mirrors to show up as people trying to stop you. And this is going to go right into what Roy is going to talk about. So people try to stop me. People resist me. People ignore me. People argue with me. People try to control, manipulate me. People act superior or invalidating. Those are mirrors, especially in business. And if that happens frequently and pushes your buttons, it could be a message that maybe you're going in the wrong direction. Maybe you're ignoring your intuition, or even showing you, as Roy will talk about, that my true purpose is maybe something else, or maybe I'm not clear about it yet. So mirrors are amazing tools for business people. And I think there's one more slide. Let's see. Oh, I love this picture. Your higher consciousness, your spirit, who you really are, knows the perfect way to see your mirrors that will wake you up, and it will do whatever works. So if you're not feeling supported or respected, encouraged, or are constantly struggling to succeed, what is being mirrored? What is that? So again, your higher consciousness is, the perfect way to wake up Royce is to have struggle in her business, or to have nobody want to buy things out of her store. Well, is that going to wake her up? Yeah, it did eventually, but it took a while. So is there one more slide, maybe? Yes. How does mirroring fit with business? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, as Roy will share with us, as I say in that little quote, she remembered who she really is, and that's what woke her up. So welcome, Roy. Let me introduce you after all of that. And you'll talk more about all of it too. So Roy has spent decades involved with business projects and investments and situations that really didn't fit his true essence. And I've known Roy for 30 years or something, and I've seen you go through a lot of that stuff. So yeah, he's endured circumstances simply to survive. I mean, how many of us do that? I've got to get paid, so I'm going to take crappy job, or I'm going to do this horrible project, or whatever it is. And doing inner work with me has helped him to resolve his subconscious self-sabotaging obstacles and transformed his life. And he's now an amazing, successful businessman. So anyway, that's what happens when you connect with your higher self. And I'll stop at that point because I really want you to tell your story. Welcome, Roy. I'm so glad you're here. Tell us your story about how you got started
Royce,
in
thank you.
business
So,
and what.
sure. Okay, sure. Well, thank
Uh-oh.
you for inviting me. I appreciate it very much. Well, I have to go back to the time after I finished college. I went out to California. It was one of the greatest uh, decisions I ever made because in California, as you know, there's many, many different businesses out there. I ever had was for a major company, and we were selling books over the phone. And I will never forget that I had. A particular experience was basically you had to stick with the script. I mean, that was part of the deal. I knew if I did not, I would be in trouble because some people who were there didn't stick to the script and they were gone during my first week of working there. Well, I won't forget. Here I was, and I prepared myself. I worked on everything I had to do to just be very, very good over the phone. And I'm following the script, and the guy who's the manager can listen to our conversations. So I want to make sure I'm doing what I need to do. Well, I actually made 5 calls. I will never forget this. I made 5 calls. Everyone said, no, 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 no. Hanging. I'm thinking, oh man. So I told my supervisor, I got to take a break. And I took the break, went to the bathroom, and you can do it. You can do it. You prepared yourself. You know you can do this. Anyway, I go back to the phone room. I get on the phone and I'm calling people up, following the script. But then I said at one point, when you see this, you're going to like it. When you like it, you're going to want to buy more. When you see this series, you're going to be so impressed by page number 59. I got 7 in a row yeses. And I knew right then and there, I got to find some way to be myself on this job. And that was one of my, I learned that I need to take, but I learned that I need to take that experience. Yes, I have to do this, that, wear this tie, no, I get that. But at the same time, to be myself. And it's making sure that I'm involved with businesses that reflect who I am. And that was a very important and a tremendous starting point.
Yeah. Wow. So what did your boss say?
So, but anyway, just going back to that, I lost you momentarily. But after that, the boss was okay with that. I mean, he didn't bother me anymore. He didn't listen to any of my phone conversations because he knew that I knew what I was doing, and that was that. But that happens sometimes in business. There's a lot to learn, and what I've come to understand is that we're talking about mirrors here, and so for people who just tuned in, the whole idea of knowing that there is an event or a person that could be negative or positive, it doesn't matter, but it gives us an opportunity to take a look at what we may be ignoring or denying. About the fact that when I was involved with real estate,
Yeah.
and in that situation,
keep freezing and going out of
it was
sync.
more cash flow oriented.
Oh, geez.
But I learned, like, wait a minute, this buy and hold stuff, that's not really for me, and I had to go through a situation that was actually in our favor. And I won't forget in that situation, I was just momentarily thrown off. But in that situation, uh, we put together the real estate track, and part of the deal was we would sell the real estate, offer to purchase to the particular, and would receive money up front, which we did, for an opportunity to see the money, which means that once the real estate uh, property is rehabilitated and it's sold, we are looking to receive a portion of the sale proceeds. So here we were. We got a chance to meet the guy, the investor, and spend time with his family. But something was very interesting. There was a lady there in the office. He seemed to be pretty friendly with her. I mean, beyond an office or business situation. Well, we found out that the guy was married. Like, what? Okay, what's going on here? Okay, well, anyway, it came to a point where one day we received a letter, and the letter indicated that we no longer wanted to do the deal. And my brother and I are looking at each other and saying, what's going on here? And we noticed that his name or his signature was at the bottom. It was plagiarized. And so here we realized, oh my goodness. So now this guy cheated on his wife and he cheated on us. Now, if you want to talk about a mirror, there was something that wasn't right about this situation. And I'm thinking about on the back end of this deal, and I'm not thinking about what I'm ignoring. And I ignore the fact that he wasn't being honest with his wife. And that was a tremendous lesson to learn in terms of looking at what people, and I realize I'm not trying to judge anyone, but then not ignore what was in front of me. And so that was a tremendous mirror and something to learn from. Yes. So there was.
Can I ask?
You want to say something? I'm sorry.
You're kind of going in and out a lot.
I'm sorry. What is that?
So
yeah,
you're going in and out. You're buffering. So we're catching a lot of what you're saying, but some of it's going out. But my question was, so what is it that you remember what you learned from that whole experience?
Oh, well.
Do you remember what you learned from that?
One of the greatest lessons I learned is to make sure that, yes, what I learned, and this obviously took some time. I mean, I wasn't as knowledgeable about the mirror, of seeing what was happening inside of me, but I realized that I need to be able to really take my time and pause before doing a business transaction. And knowing that it's not always going to be about the money. It's going to be about some other situations that may occur. So that was a tremendous lesson to learn. I also, through the years, have come to realize that, whenever something is brought to my attention, and it could be negative or positive, it doesn't matter. What matters is my higher self, that part that shows love, compassion, that really wants to embrace who I am. That part is screaming inside of me. And it's saying, you know what? Fear and faith cannot stand on the same platform. And when it comes to you, just that we love you. And I have to have that, what I call that inner dialogue. And knowing that it's so important to be involved with that and embrace that. So those are some of the lessons I've learned to apply in business. So the other part, go ahead. I know we're somewhat delayed here. Something's
No, I'm just
going on.
The delay is kind of annoying because you're saying something and then it stops. So anyway, we'll struggle along with it.
Okay,
technology.
no problem. We will.
I have a couple of questions. The
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
maybe it's a question, maybe a comment. When you were talking about doing cold calling,
Mhm.
I probably get 20
Right.
calls a day from people doing cold calling. Most of them, I just go, thank you, I'm not interested, or I hang up or whatever. A lot of it goes into my junk
Right.
calls, and I don't even have to deal with them. But I find that once in a great while, somebody will call up and I can just
Mhm.
sense that they're being real, they're being authentic. And I listen to them. I may not want the product, but I do listen to them. So it's just so interesting that even in that field of business, people are encouraged to go by a script and say the right things. And I'd much rather have them, I always try to joke around with people when they call, and I always say something funny. And sometimes they respond, and sometimes I know, they can't respond because I'm saying something that's off of their script.
Right.
I actually had that happen last night.
Exactly.
I had to call about my TV going down, and the person that answered said, "Hi, this is
Right.
Mario from Texas." And I went, "Oh, I'm so sorry you live in Texas." Blank. There wasn't even a response. And at the end of the call, I said, "Well, I hope you survive living in Texas." And he finally chuckled, and I thought, "Oh, good, I got to him." But yeah, it's so sad to me that they're told you are told you've got to stick to the script. Very sad. But I'm glad that you worked through that and
Yeah.
got successful in that. Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to
Yeah. Well,
mention
thanks.
is, oh, go ahead. You're delayed.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So the second question, and this is something that I have dealt with since I started teaching people, and that is I guess it's kind of a dichotomy between having a spiritual purpose or even coming from a spiritual place in what you do, and then feeling like, should I
Mhm.
get money for this? With that little balancing thing, can I be successful and also be spiritual? How do they go hand in hand? And because I know for probably the first few years of teaching, I would let people do it for free, or I would charge $5 or something. And it's always been an issue, I know, for a lot of people
Mhm.
in a spiritual mindset. How do you deal with that? Because I know how spiritual you are and how committed you are to being a spiritual person. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Oh, that's a wonderful question. I'm glad you asked that. You know what I really look at is the fact that I can change people's lives in some form or fashion. When I call a business and I see what they have, and I've done all the work, and I know they might be struggling, or if they're not struggling, my whole focus is to help them to do better. And I know if they're able to do better, employees can do better. And not only that, the community can do better. Now, I must say this, when I do my research, I like to see if there is some type of community involvement that the business is involved with. Because if they are, that's connected to who I am. And I can connect that into my spiritual uh, way of looking at life and knowing that higher part of me wants to show that love because I'm working on always finding love within myself. And I want to share that love with other people. And so that is something that's very important. I really like to focus on that. And that inspires me to and motivates me to in many, many ways.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. And
So
do you find that
we're
people
able to
really
hear what
get that?
I'm saying. But yeah, yeah. So they get
This is so
that
frustrating.
as long as I know within myself that spiritual part that part of speaking. That higher self part
Yeah.
wants to come out. It doesn't want to. It wants to be able to make sure, and it's that I don't have unresolved issues, because I can remember one situation where it's a major group out of California, and I spoke to everyone on the board. Everyone was ready to go, and 2 weeks later they reached out to us and said, we don't want to do it anymore. It's like, oh my goodness. And so I found myself judging, oh my goodness, I don't want to deal with boards anymore. But see, I realized that, I'm really looking at myself, and I need to clear. I mean, that's something that I need to clear with that, because I don't want that to come out in some form when I'm talking to a business where maybe I created a pattern years ago. And then that pattern, let's say with that board or some unresolved issue in business, I, for some reason, was not able to forgive myself, because I was looking at a decision that I made in the past. I formed a decision about something, and now that decision starts to continue to go forward in terms of speaking to new prospects. So I'm always in tune with that, and I know if I am, then I know people will get it. I know they will get what I'm saying and what I'm service.
And what I'm hearing you say is that your intention has to be pure. So if you have all the right words,
Yes.
and you say, oh, I'm trying to help you and let me help you, but you're really coming from a place of, I really want this sale because I need to pay my rent, that's
Right.
what's going to get reflected to you. It has to be real. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, what makes it easier for me, as I said earlier, is knowing that that company is doing some great work in the community, because I relate to that, because it's something I do. I mentor, and I'm involved with different activities to uplift people. And so knowing that others are doing that, yes, we are making that connection, and that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's take a little bit of a break, and we'll come right back and continue to talk about mirrors and business. We'll be right back.
Om Times TV.
All right, great.
Do you want to break free from old patterns and limiting beliefs that subconsciously sabotage your life? What are your triggers, and what really is beneath them? Are you seeking answers to life's big questions, intrigued by the possibility of self-discovery that goes deep? Looking for tools to help you break free from hidden sources of feeling stuck, confused, and unworthy? Perfect Life Awakening takes you on an epic inner adventure that shifts your perception of yourself, others, and life permanently. Identify and overcome the origins of subconscious triggers and limiting beliefs holding you back. That's how you transform your mindset from the roots. That's how you liberate your spirit, awaken your intuition, and discover your true purpose. Dive deep into the mysteries held within. Embark on a life-altering journey of self-discovery. Be a trailblazer within your own life. Go from triggered to empowered, because you deserve a perfect life awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. I am talking with Roy Daggs about mirrors in business, and I apologize for all of the buffering that's going on. I know that sometimes you hear me 10 seconds after I've said something, and so we'll just struggle through it here, technology. But I wanted to talk about intuition in business. You mentioned that intuition is kind of your guiding light a lot of times in business. Tell us how that works, maybe an example of how that works for you.
You know, the power of the pause, when I get to a point where I can connect with nature, with anyone may call it God-like or mindfulness. I'm not at all getting people to think in any form or fashion about how to call that spiritual light. But what matters to me is that I realize there's something that's going to take place. It may be some fear. It may be some great, but whatever it is, the power of being able to have that internal dialogue. And by that, I'm saying, I know faith and fear cannot stand on the same platform, but then fear sometimes like to knock on that door. And inside that door is trust and faith, and we're having a great party. We're enjoying each other, but fear keeps banging on the door. And so trust needs and faith need to come to the door to let fear know, hey, we're having a party here, and we're not going to allow you fear. We're happy, but we're not going to allow you to come in because you want to sabotage this opportunity. It's that dialogue, that inner dialogue that ought to be very, very important. But also at the same time, recognizing that perhaps there are some patterns that are unresolved that I have not taken the time to really look and see why that fear came up in the first place. And then to go forward and realize, okay, what is my truth? And looking at my truth and being able to come in contact with that higher self is so important, because I know that's part of the healing. And then to be able to forgive myself and make those commitments in a kind way to the universe, and then putting forth the action, because if there's no action, there can really be no change. And so it's that type of process through when I'm in a business situation and I have to make a decision. Yes, I take the time to do that. And it's very, very appealing to my soul. It makes my soul cry. And I know there are sometimes when inside of me, I feel crying, but I'm not able to let that out through my eyes. And so I know that the tears aren't there, but I'm crying on the inside. And I know it's time to take that time to really pause and just be grateful for that higher self that wants to work with me.
And so that's how you access your intuition at that moment of pausing.
Oh yes, without a doubt. I mean, that's it, because it's that higher self, it's that awareness, It's all of that that's there for me, that's sitting there. It's been waiting for me. It's been dormant. Sometimes it's just been dormant, different issues. And if they're unresolved, it sits there. But higher self wants to have a party. It wants to embrace me. It wants to show love. And that in itself is so important, that ability to reconnect. And I was just thinking one day, people go to the temple, the synagogue, the church, whatever, to reconnect. And that's a beautiful place to go. But then there are other places to go that are important too. And that is knowing that we can go inside of ourselves and be able to reconnect to part of us that perhaps we have ignored or did. And that's love and self-love.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I find also that in my own life, just without going into a long story about it, we owned a retail store for 21 years. And the intention that I had when I started that store was definitely based on my intuition. It said, this needs to happen, and this is how it has to look. And you're here to bring eco-consciousness, as I called it, to the world. It was before green was a household word. Nobody knew what I meant when I would say, oh, this product is earth friendly. They're like, what does that mean? Why is it so expensive? So it felt very pure in terms of my intention to create that store. And then it reached a certain point where my intuition stepped in and said, okay, it's time to close. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I mean, I fought it every inch of the way. And sales kept getting lower. And eventually, my husband had a stroke and we had to close. So I look back on that and it's like, that's because I wasn't listening to my intuition. Clearly was not listening to it. So yeah, things stopped working when and those mirrors kept showing me, but I just kept ignoring them. So yeah, has that happened in your life?
Yeah, Royce, that's a great story, and in business that's crucial to be able to do that. And knowing that the higher self is so happy for us. It looks at it from the standpoint that's different from that lower self or that part of us choosing to do something from fear or which is that lower self, which is trying to survive, basically. But on the other hand, that higher self is screaming at us and say, hey, look, I want to help you. I want you to be when we ignore it or deny that something doesn't look right, and that lower self, because as you know, that fear always needs a co-star. It always needs a co-star. And so when we realize we can connect with that higher self says, wait a minute, you to find inside of you that higher self co-star. It's right there. It's right before you. And so, sometimes we don't realize that love comes from us, even though on the outside it looks like something that's not too pleasing. But on the inside, it's really love. So, but yeah, that's a great story about the store, and I do remember that. Yeah, that was a great story, by the way. I love it. Yes.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah, it was so bizarre to me because it was coming from such a pure place. And I look back on it, like I said, and I realized that I didn't want to close because of my ego, because it would be a crushing thing to admit that, okay, it's time to be done.
Oh, yeah.
So I just held on to until we couldn't anymore. Yeah, that ego. So the other question to ask you is, having worked with you privately for a long time, a lot of times you get in touch with past life memories, past life experiences. How do those experiences connect with being successful in this life? Do you find that it's helpful, or what happens from that with you?
Oh, I tell you, it's really interesting you're saying that, because when I first came in contact with you, I'm thinking past lives. What is she? I'm trying to figure out how to make life come together in this life, right? So
Yeah.
I was one of the skeptics of a past life.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it doesn't make
I
sense.
remember it well.
And then one day, I won't forget, you would always, yeah, yeah. And so one day you would always talk about distrust. Okay. And so I went into a past life, and it was at some point I realized, oh my goodness, this is happening to me right now, you know? And so I made the connection. I made that connection, and I began to really accept that, knowing that this is going to help me to get through this life, okay? Because that's what I want to do. I want to get through this life, and I don't need to engage in some activity or take something that's going to in some way alter my thinking. I just want to know and remember that I can do this and find this in this life with some of the tools that are presented to me. That's been really great. So the past is important, no doubt about it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that
So
one of the reasons that I encourage people to discover past lives is so they can get a deeper resolve of some of the real origins of some of the self-sabotage and the lack of deservingness and the things that we do to the mirrors that we attract that are negative. Do you find that happens from doing that work? Because I know you've
right.
looked at a past life very frequently. What happens from that?
Yeah. Um, as I mentioned, yeah. So there is that connection, and the whole idea of trusting is so important. I have myself in different roles in my past lives, and I realize that it's been unresolved, or I'm working toward cleaning it up now. Yet I did not embrace in the beginning that whole past life experience, but it has been that experience that has allowed me to see how I can resolve issues and forgive myself. That's the big part about that, because I realized in many instances there was something that took place, and it was not a total completion. And as a result, I found myself in that, as I said, unresolved state of beingness. And just knowing how to forgive has been a really big of not only the past life but this life. I mean, decisions that I've made in business that I probably should not have made. Going through that whole process of forgiving myself is really important, because if I don't do that, then I'm going to carry myself forward to the next one, and those past issues show up with that new business opportunity. And so I have to be really cognizant of that, and I'm glad I am. It's an ongoing, lovable experience. That's how I look at it. But as you always say, we have levels and go deeper. And through the years, my shovel is bigger, able to go deeper. But it's okay, because I know there is that higher self that wants me to do that. It's looking forward to me to keep doing that. And whether I'm just looking at a spiritual or religious text, or walking through a park, there's something going to touch me. And I look forward to that. Give me a, wow, that situation some time ago, time now I'm here, and I'm forgiving myself, and I'm grateful that that past situation is before me so I can move forward.
Yeah. I think that's important what you're saying. a lot of people are very hesitant to look at past lives because, oh no, you're supposed to just be here now, and why drag up the past, and all
Right.
those attitudes about it. And I think there's so much freedom and there's so much empowerment that happens from just realizing, oh, I've continued that pattern for the last 2,000 years. I think it's time to end. And it's not just intellectually. I mean, there are a lot of lifetimes that when I first started doing this work, I got in touch with just kind of a story about them, but it wasn't experiential. Getting in touch with the moment that I did something in that lifetime that I'm still beating myself up about, and feeling it release and, like you said, forgive myself, is so empowering. It's magical. And then to see how the mirrors shift, because I don't need those mirrors in my face anymore. I don't need anybody to beat me down and tell me I don't deserve this success or whatever it is that that I'm saying to myself, and I'm having others mirror to me. I don't need that anymore. It's really miraculous. Yeah.
Right.
So what we only have a few minutes here. So what would be your most profound, amazing advice that you can give business people or people considering being in business? What would you say to them in terms of all of this?
Well, I love that with what you said. What advice that I can give business people, and
Yeah. Yeah.
be careful of your acts. And what I mean by that is, and I won't forget, uh, when I was first introduced to the whole business world, they meaning those who are uh, the upper echelon, if I may say, of the company or a training program that you may attend. They bring up the top people, the top salespeople, the top business people, and then subconsciously being other than who they are. And other people can be a guide. We can learn from other people. We can have mentors. They can teach us. That's great. But at some point, we have to have trust and be able to learn, and then go in a way which represents who we are internally. And that is really, really important. I mean, if there's advice that I can give, it would be that.
And of course, to see what happens if you don't come from that place. If you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, it's just not going to work. And again, it's your spirit, it's your higher self saying,
Right.
no, don't go that way. Figure it out. So yeah, those mirrors,
Yeah.
you're never relenting on
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
And that's so true, because the higher self wants us to get a place of deservingness. We may not see that when we're going through that, but deservingness is so important. And at the end of the day, no matter what has been told to us, we don't want to sabotage what we're doing. We don't want to end up acting who we are internally. We realize beliefs can really hurt us because they disassociate us from who we are. And so all of that is so important. And just to be able to recognize that is crucial to moving forward, taking action.
Yeah. And I think what you said is really important too, in terms of deservingness.
Yeah.
That's, besides mirrors, that's my other key issue that I work with people, because there's a part of us that just
Right.
doesn't think we deserve anything. We don't deserve this raise. We don't deserve success in business. We don't deserve a good relationship. We don't deserve love. And it's because of our past. It's because we're still beating ourselves up from things
Right.
that we've done in the past. And those things are hidden. We suppress them. We just deny them and we forget them. And,
Right.
that's what mirrors That's the biggest gift that mirrors give us, is reminding us what we did that we're still beating ourselves up about, so that we can stop doing that and we can start deserving, because we're powerful beings. We're powerful, amazing spiritual beings. And there's nothing that we can't manifest, and there's nothing that we don't deserve. But we have to get to the origin of those beliefs saying that, no, you don't deserve. So, yeah. So what other bits of advice can you give, especially in terms of deservingness? What else have you learned about that?
Well, one thing I can say this is that at any point, if I am not in tune with myself, if I'm feeling that fear, okay, then I know it's really that higher self, that spirit upon me, to take a look at that deservingness, to take a look at love, to take a look at all of that sits inside of me. Sometimes we think if something is bad or coming toward us, or if we're sad, we may be going through an act and not realizing that, wait a minute, that higher self is really calling upon us. Because if we stop and think about it, it has a smile. And it wants us to look for that smile that's inside of us, so that we can see that on the outside, it may look negative, it may not right, it may feel us, it may make us feel adequate, but on the inside, there is that higher self life that's waiting for us. And when we run away and connect of that fear, we're not seeing what is actually happening inside of us. It can change our life in a moment. In a moment. So it's important to see that, because that part of about deservingness, about love, about what's inside of us. And we were fighting, in that mother's womb, it out against billions of other, if you want to call them eggs and sperm, whatever. Here we are, doggone it. We're here. We've already beaten the odds. And we have to begin to see our life like that. Why do we want to beat ourselves up? That's something we need to look at, that, if that's the case. If that is the case. Yes.
Yeah. And to keep in mind that we chose that particular sperm and egg for some reason, for some huge reason, on a spiritual, higher consciousness level.
Right.
Everything chosen, including the struggles that we go through, including, all the lack of deservingness that we feel, including not being authentic, all of that stuff. And it's stuff that we've chosen so that we can get it, and so that we can success, and we can be successful, and we can be deserving, and we can be authentic. So it's just these scenarios that we've chosen so that we can wake up, and so that all those mirrors can coalesce and go, okay, here you go. Get it. So yeah, it's all perfect, as I say. Yeah. So if somebody wants to reach
right
out
there.
to you,
It is right there.
It's right there. Yeah. So if somebody is interested in your excuse me, in your business, or wants to you mentor, how can they reach you?
Okay, I can be reached on LinkedIn, and it's Roy, R-O-Y, and my last name is D as in David, A as in Apple, G as in George, G as in George, S as in Sam, and I'm the third. So Roy Daggs III, LinkedIn.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Roy, for your wisdom and your incredible knowledge about business. And here's to your success, and here's to everybody listening, their success. And we all deserve that. And just to promote myself for a minute, follow me on my Substack post. I post every week. It's called Royce's Ramblings. And if you're interested in my Perfect Life Awakening program, you can find me at roycemorales.com. I'm on all the social media channels, and I hope that everybody looks at their mirrors and we create peace on earth. Thank you, Roy. Thank you all.
Thank you.